through a program that various people have been contributing to, especially Linda and Natasha, but lots of people who are mentioned up there. So what's happened is we've got an opportunity from ACU giving us IPI, a rather sizable, well, not as much as they originally trying to give us, $200,000 to do research that will bring together our indigenous and non-indigenous researchers to do a really positive pro-social kind of intervention. So I'm going to tell you about what we've come up with. So this is happening extremely fast. It's not my fault. We actually have deadlines to meet. I just got the money like last week, and then we have to have a report like in 4 months and 6 months and 8 months. So the speed of it's being dictated by the grant itself. But they asked, can I do this if he gives me 200 grand? And I said, yes, of course. Yes. How fast is it? Just don't look big at this. No. So you got to get that response very fast. So I just want to show you a few statistics. So what this is we're going to try and go into a school and transform that school, a poor school, using the best science we have in positive psychology to see what we can actually do. Can we make a difference in these people's lives? Oh, this is kind of the motivation. If we start to look at the normal condition of being an adolescent, and actually you could show similar statistics for adults. Just some of the kind of normal community sample, you start to see that, you know, when we send our kids to school, we just assume that everything's going to be all right. Trust to it. May not be a good assumption. So this is, you can do similar surveys with adults and you get a similar answer that basically there's a lot of struggle with anxiety, depression. There's a lot of suffering amongst humans, regardless of their age. And it's even worse in the case of poverty. So all those things you saw would be amplified. Oops. So I just want to, there's a lot of disadvantages to being poor, and I just want to focus on the one which is how it affects parents and the stressful nature of being a parent. So this is the main context in which we would hope young people would be nurtured. But what happens when you're poor is that you experience a lot of stressors. These are just examples of some of those things. Anybody who's been poor can vouch for this being quite present. And so what it does is it puts those parents under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. They don't have as much time to kind of calmly sit down and read the book. And the research suggests that they're less involved with their children, they're less positive, they tend to be more critical and angry and more punitive, largely because they're in a harsh, impoverished environment, which leads to them being sometimes reactive. And the big cause of many problems in adulthood and in adolescence is this coercive, non-nurturing environments. So what I mean by coercive is simply this: an environment that uses a lot of punishment to control kids. Okay, so it could be, like in the school context, expulsion, detention, teachers yelling, so that's aversive control. Parenting, aversive control, love withdrawal, so if you do something wrong, I don't love you, you're not part of my family anymore, or physical abuse, or yelling, or screaming again. So the research is fairly strong on this, that children raised in these kind of coercive families are the most likely to be aggressive, academically, smoke, develop drug and alcohol problems, and become delinquent. They battle with their partners when they become adults, get divorced, and raise children with the same problems. More likely to have depression, and there is the greater risk of cardiovascular disease and worse on many health markers. So what happens is that when you try and use aversive control to control another person's behavior, if you try and scare them or intimidate them or bully them, the person typically, we know this for a long time about punishment, often react against it, act aggressively in response to the aggressive control strategy, or they'll simply avoid you, and they'll do whatever you're trying to teach them to do, but just when you're not there. So punishment tends to have this effect of them going underground, and leads to a lot of negative outcomes. So the solution that we're going to propose for this school, so we're going to try and dramatically change the whole school. Very excited by it. Rarely do you get this like, here, have $200,000 to do the thing you think needs to be done. So this, in this case, the intervention isn't an afterthought. After we collect all our data that we're going to publish, it's actually the main thing. And what we're going to do is try and go into a poor school, maybe one in. So we're actually going to a place where 75% are in the bottom quartile of income, 15% indigenous, another 30% don't have English as their first language at home. So it's really quite. We're going to put it to the test, positive psychology test. And we know 4 things that seem to, about interventions that seem to work in creating more nurturing environments for these kids. So mindful, flexible, and pragmatic pursuit of pro-social values. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the intervention and how we do this. But promoting psychological flexibility, which is the ability to persist in the things you care about and to change your behavior if it's not working and do something new in the service of what you care about, your values. The second thing is promote and reinforce pro-social behavior. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but what we're going to do is we're going to actually have peer-led interventions. So there will be, I've done this before in schools, and we're going to do this now, folks. In one school, kids from every grade level are going to come together and form groups of pro-social, kind of social groups, with the purpose of putting some sort of pro-social intervention into play in their school. So it could be random acts of kindness, it could be an anti-bullying program, it could be whatever they come up with. So one of the things that's really interesting about this program is it will be guided by kind of deep scientific principles, but the actual content will be generated by the students, working with teachers, elders, and other people. So the content is driven by the community, with the premise that the community knows actually what they need and what needs to be done. The third thing is to minimize social and biological toxic conditions. We're still working on this. But examples of this would be reducing the extent that punishment is used to control kids. Like teachers yelling at kids, for example. And this last one, monitor and set limits on influence and opportunities to engage in problematic behavior. So a classic example of this is there's a big difference in outcomes between kids when they go home. Is there an adult around? And those kids are much likely to get into drugs and do antisocial things. It's that simple. Adult supervised activities make a big difference. Okay, so let me just tell you, I'm going to talk mostly about the first 2 points, promoting mindful, flexible, and pragmatic pursuit of pro-social values and creating pro-social behavior. And just to show you the kind of, this is the model we'll be using. And let me think how, because I want to make sure Bill Dither has plenty of time. What time is it, Bill?
1:45.
Okay, 1:45, yeah. I just want to give you a flavor of the intervention, how we approach it, because we're going into a multicultural context. And a context where there's a high indigenous group, a high non-English speaking group, and a place where it'd be very easy to be invalidating, to come in with a kind of intervention. It sounds like it's, sometimes, well, let me tell you what it isn't. Let me skip to this slide first so I can tell you what it isn't. So there's been a number of different takes on what is positive psychology, and sometimes people think there is an intervention called positive psychology. But that is not at all true. There are very different ways to approach this. So Seligman launched this field and basically argued that we've been focusing too much on problems and we need to focus on strengths and what's best about people. And then when they asked him, well, what do you do to intervene? He then went to cognitive behavior therapy and used that, specifically rational emotive behavior therapy. Now the problem with this approach in a positive psychology context, so it's strange that the first positive psychologist would be suggesting this, is that CBT is based on looking at how dysfunctional people behave and comparing them to normal people. So what cognitive behavior therapy tries to do is make dysfunctional people look like normal people. Now that doesn't sound like thriving and excellence, does it? It sounds like getting rid of dysfunctional beliefs. And in my experience, I work with adolescents. I'm really not I don't find much success with trying to challenge their beliefs, telling them they're irrational, or what's the evidence for that. So the approach we're using isn't this. It's not cognitive behavior therapy. It involves the minimal use of cognitive challenging and restructuring and basically interventions that seek to teach people the best content that they should have in their heads. So it's also not this second thing. So another idea about positive psychology interventions is about thinking positively. And this approach that we're going to be using is a mindfulness-based approach. And both Belginder and I are very much against thinking positively. But you know, like, unlock the giant within and be the powerful, all-powerful. You know, like, I'm not going to go into a poor school and say, you know, you just got to think positively. Like, you know, that's your cup isn't half full. Your cup is half full. They actually got less in their cup. So there is an alternative. There's very different ways to approach positive psychology interventions. They're not all the same. And this is a mindfulness-based approach with 3 pieces to it. Advisor is just our kind of metaphorical way of talking about that kind of inner voice. It's kind of like this GPS, you know, the inner voice. It's kind of constantly guiding you, trying to direct you, do this, do that. It's like having a mother-in-law on your shoulders all the time. Only a nice mother-in-law sometimes. I know Jan's thinking, oh no. Oh no. But so the advisor is like, so one of the key skills with advisor is helping them to recognize when it's not being helpful, you know. If they're buying into, say, a stereotype that, you know, I'm poor and therefore I'm less intelligent than this person, that might not be something that's helpful. We teach them to mindfully unhook from unhelpful kinds of advice that their own mind has given them that they've been taught by society a lot of times. We'll talk a bit about that when Belginder comes up. But the other aspect of the advisor is when to listen to good advice. So like an elder, when to listen to what an elder says. Well, you know, you can have a really wise person say something to you. Has anybody ever had this happen? And they just didn't listen to it? Anybody ever not listen to good advice? Okay, so it's the other side too, which is knowing when to listen to that GPS. Okay, if you're trying to get to Sydney and the GPS is directing you towards Minto, maybe you should stop listening to it. But if it is actually getting you to Sydney, that's good.
Janet and I have done that several occasions with her GPS. It's absolutely stuffed.
It is. I know exactly how that is because I had one that's saying, I knew I was driving away from Sydney because I could see it in the background, and I was just like, kept telling me to go this way. I'm like,
my house kept telling us to go back to Sydney.
Yeah.
It wasn't good.
So it is actually, this is a really deep process psychologically to have people see their thoughts as just things that come and go and don't necessarily have to listen to them. But you notice as I teach, this is a skill we teach, you notice there's no content in it. I'm not telling them to believe X, Y, or Z. So it's all in relation to values. So noticing skills, it's the closest thing we have to what we might call mindfulness, but involves awareness of feelings, awareness of bodily sensations, noticing other people, their expressions, their reactions, and that's kind of a core skill. It's pretty well supported in literature. Discover maps to what positive psychology would call broaden and build. So whereas advisor is relying on old learning and knowledge and rules to get you places, like a GPS, to say, cut corners, you don't have to use trial and error to find out where you're going, right? It tells you go this way, then this way, and this way. It's really good, except when it leads you into trouble. Like if your advisor is telling you you're not good enough and you're actually not doing the things you care about. Discover is the way to as an alternative way to find your way to the things you care about. It's about engaging in trial and error and experiencing the world, even when your advisor says you can't do it. So it's a lot about trying things out. And usually it's about trying new things. So if you keep doing the same things your advisor's always said, or you keep doing the same things you've always done, you'll always get what you always have had. So discover is about a way of expanding, broadening, building, spotting strengths, discovering value. And again, you'll notice none of these things, these are processes, they don't really specify what people should think or not think. That's why I think you'll see on the outside, context is on the outside. This is fantastic. I think this is going to be fantastic for dealing with different cultures and stuff, because there's no, like the way that an indigenous person might do noticing or discovery or advisor might be quite different from other cultures. And that's fine. So I'm just going to skip a lot of this. I do want to kind of set the stage for what Belginder is going to talk about. One of the things that's a special focus in this intervention is, what the heck is this? Isn't this demeaning? Isn't this show a demeaning show about people who are poor? Like, so basically, has everybody seen Struggle Street? Yeah, I know, it's gripping and I have watched it, so it's okay. I mean, it's terrible, but it is, they basically are pulled to show people who are falling apart acting like idiots. And they're focusing on capturing that because that's what people want to see. But naturally, when you kind of, these are the most disadvantaged people, the ones with the least money, the least power, the least influence. It's kind of crappy, I think. And what it leads to is, I think an environment, this environment for indigenous and for poor is stigmatizing. And that means that there are stereotypes and beliefs that are taught within the culture implicitly. And the danger is, of course, that remember I talked about the advisor? Well, where does advice come from? It doesn't always come from wise elders. Sometimes it comes from TV commercials. Sometimes it comes from friends. Sometimes it comes from the wider society. Sometimes it comes from Struggle Street, you know, and how they depict what it means to be poor. And so the question is, when people start to have these kinds of thoughts, when you're poor or indigenous and you start to have these kinds of thoughts, how does that then influence your behavior? Does it have to influence behavior? So the main thing about a mindfulness-based approach is that if you're in a toxic environment, these thoughts are going to be there. So it's acceptance-based approach. These thoughts are going to be here, there, but they do not have to cause action. In a mindful, noticing context, one can have thoughts like this, make space for it, and still, you know, say, I'm stupid, and still go to university. Notice that thought as a thought. Make space for it, step back from it, and still do the thing you care about, the value. So I have to skip over this to give Belginder plenty of time, but the main focus of this intervention is going to be targeting individual and group level, so the groups of adolescents will be helping each other, supporting each other to help implement the intervention in discussion with elders, teachers, principals, community members. The main purpose is to help them use the DNA skills in a way that promotes growth and builds vitality and valued action. And vitality and valued action is defined by them. So again, culturally relative. It's a relative thing. And just to show you, so we're going to have 6 groups that cut across all 6 grades. And we hope that each of them will emphasize one of the 6 ways to well-being. Felicia worked on a document that they identified 5 ways to well-being, so we thought we'd add one. But the one we added was self-care. Right? Right? Doesn't that need to be added? It's not just an arbitrary one. I didn't just say playing chess or something like that. That's not arbitrary. Self-care seems to be. Does everybody think that that's an important addition?
Yeah.
You can say no.
I don't know what the other thought about.
Okay, 6 ways to well-being. All right, well, that's an interesting question. This view, I'll close with this. So I just want to see what you guys think they are. What are the behaviors? These are behaviors, things that you could observe that are connected to well-being and promote well-being. What do you think they are? Number 1.
Giving?
Giving? Yeah, that's number 4, but yes. Giving? Yeah, that's nice. What a nice person.
Engaging in relationships.
Yes, connecting with others too. Come on, this is positive psychology. You guys should get one too.
Physical activity?
Yeah. What are the physical activity people like? I'm not sure about that. Yeah, that's one of them.
Something about self-worth.
That's not a behavior. It has to be observed behavior.
But pursuing challenges.
Yeah. 4.
Noticing?
Yeah. 5. Embracing the moment and self-care. Got them all. All right. We all are positive, so connecting with others. Being active. Embracing the moment. Challenge. Giving. And self-care. I think in self-care is also a healthy diet. That's important in there. So, what time is it? Maybe what I could do is let Belzinder talk, and then we can talk about the actual intervention.
That'd be a good idea.
But and so the intervention, this is what I meant by it not necessarily targeting content, doesn't necessarily seek to directly change this stuff, but rather to change how people relate to that stuff.
I think we lost Cheryl. Just so right through that. Yeah.
The question for Belzinder, because this is the model we want to test, right? So we got to be able to measure this. So Belzinder was meant to answer the question, how do we measure this? And I'm not.
I have.
Just use self-reports.
Use IAT if you want to. As long as it's right.
So, I mean, one of our questions is, to test a model like this, we want to see, if you think about the kind of EMU model that Rhonda has put forth for CEO, is the idea of identifying exemplar people who overcome their environment. And so, what we want to do is say, well, look, here's a kid who has been in the same kind of toxic culture, has these associations, and yet doesn't let them influence their behavior. So we need to be able to measure it. We need to be able to measure that stuff. So I guess should we open the floor to that? Because we really don't have much time to go into the whole design. And maybe just focus in on the measure of prejudice and self-stigma.
That would be good.
Yeah, I think that would be enough for today. So maybe hearing from some of our people who've worked with Indigenous, which seems to be Janet's the representative. How do you go about measuring prejudice and self-prejudice?
Well, I mean, I don't know how you go about it at all, really, but the thing that we're talking about is the things that people hold in their minds. And for Aboriginal people, there's a new debate going on in that because the children are taught from a very young age that they are worthless, drunks, blah, 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 it's self-perpetuating. They become what they are told that they are.
Yes.
And it's that cycle that not only, we want to change, but Aboriginal people want to change themselves. So,
I mean, so the important thing for us is to be able to have a measure that is going to be accepted, that shows that this is happening, and then allows us to show that there's a way that they can have those thoughts and not.
yes.
So how do we, first we have to show that this is happening, I think,
I expected Janet to say chuck out all those quantitative measures and do qualitative research and it'd work. So I'm astounded that she hasn't said that.
But then how would you know if an intervention changed it? We need measures to see if an intervention works.
Well, I would ask them.
So self-report.
Yes,
Wouldn't you do both? You know, and I mean,
the other one, though.
you would do both. And I mean, in our COE application, one of the things that we've emphasised is the importance of bringing Western scientific methods as well as Aboriginal ways of being, doing and knowing together. So you'd actually do both to test, what worked and to have a look at it. Can I also say, like with this sort of stuff, I think there's too much dancing around the constructs, as you're saying, Valgenda. They're not direct enough in asking people exactly, like, if you ask a question because you think that this vague item or this scale is going to give you what you think is that construct, you'll often find that it isn't that measure at all. So I think we need to be very direct in terms of developing scales about these things. Though the other problem that comes up with young children and in schools, measures like this are very difficult, and ask Lazar about this, they're very difficult to get through the Department of Education because they don't want you to ask about the dark side. They're constantly asking you about the positive. So even getting such measures in with a sensitive study like what we're doing here is going to be quite difficult with dealing with the department.
And I think it's really important that we do so, because it'd be good from a political perspective to show, look, this is how much they're internalizing the stigma. If it's there, we need to show that. I mean, I remember how dramatic the shows were, in America in early days of prejudice in the 50s and 60s, where they showed these kind of really blatant self-stigma happening with the black kids preferring to play with white dolls and things like that. But, I mean, I don't know if that's great science, but it wakes people up and says, what's going on here? So I want this to not just influence these kids, which we hope we do, but to have some political cachet. And so I guess we need to figure out how to measure these in a way that will be accepted. Well, no, what we want is, first we want to be able to measure, since we're doing a massive intervention, and I think, I'm just hypothesizing self-stigma, like Janet's saying, is a major issue. So that's the hypothesis. It means we've got to be able to measure it. And we've got to be able to show that our intervention lessens its impact.
Can I also say that, a couple of comments. I think it's obviously the interventions are more than about stigma. The The interventions are about success, people. We're trying to get these kids to turn around from kids. Look, these kids, we've been out to survey in some of these schools, and you can't even get them to complete a survey, and what they do to surveys, Tash can tell you, is unbelievable and bad. These kids are not engaged in school, they're not engaged in society, they are really high risk. So in having interventions, what we're trying to do is turn this around. To turn these kids from all this negative, I'm not going to be anything, I'm not going to get anywhere, to be, I can be whatever I want to be, I can succeed. We've got to have measures that focus on that. One of the things that I thought, like we were talking about advisors, when to listen to good advice. One of the things about good advice is self-talk, how you talk to yourself. And you can train kids to do positive self-talk to themselves. We also talked, which I think is really important, we talked about that there's no content, yet the intervention's aiming to improve academic outcomes. Okay, yes, sure. I think those psychological constructs are really important.
I didn't think there's no content, as in we're not teaching to believe certain things.
No, okay. But I also think we're saying these things lead to good test performance. That's right. What leads to good test performance? Yes, that. But it's linking that to what they're doing in schooling as being successful. So I think it would help if we tried to get that link in there. In self-concept enhancement, we do that, but we have the teachers just positively reinforce kids. Say they're learning to read. Oh, they can't read, Rhonda, there's nothing I can positively reinforce them back. Can they recognise letters? Yes. Great, start there and then go to the next step. So they start using positive reinforcement strategies and enhance their self-concept by linking it to actual school tasks. So I'd suggest we do some self-concept enhancement strategies, teaching the teachers how to do that.
I mean, we would do that, that would be done as a way, positive reinforcement is part of the nurturing environment.
Yeah.
But in this model, because it's a mindfulness-based approach, there's no direct attempts to alter self-concept. The content of self-concept, there's no direct attempts to change the content of thoughts.
No.
It does happen as a result of them perceiving one, but we don't try, in other words, the intervention is never said to be about having a positive self-concept.
Yeah, but it should
It's
be,
about
that's what I'm saying.
I have a very strong reservation.
Yeah, but you've got a strong reservation in that it's about content.
No, my reservation is that when you make self-esteem the reason for the intervention, then what it teaches these kids is that if I don't have self-esteem, I can't do it. And I've been in these poor environments. I had low self-esteem. I still have low self-esteem sometimes. And if you have to stop moving when you have doubt yourself, you're screwed. So what I'm trying to say
Okay, but
is,
it's not self-esteem.
or self-concept. I flunked my senior year. I went to university. So I definitely had self-concepts about not being a good student.
Yep.
What I'm saying is that we can disempower those so that they're not so powerful. Because if they're in a context that is toxic, negative, abusive, people are saying things, telling things, that's the thoughts they're going to have. I'm not going to do battle with the kind of cultural input that's going on there.
No, it's not that. It's making them feel good about the abilities that they've got and the strengths that they've got. And what we've found is with Indigenous kids, that does improve.
Yeah, I mean, we do strength spotting, we do all that, but it is always in the service of those actions, of the 6 ways: connecting, giving, challenging yourself, embracing the moment. So it probably does result in self-esteem.
It comes under self-care.
Yeah, self-care, but I'm afraid to reinforce any agenda that's about having the right internal experiences before you get on with it. And the danger of that approach is saying, well, until you have this self-concept, if you say, it sounds all positive, like you just need to have a positive self-concept, you can conquer anything.
Yeah, no, it's not all. I'm not saying that it should be all.
But then what they
It should be part of
relate,
it.
what people infer is if I don't have it, then what happens?
Yeah. But the big problem that we've got with Indigenous kids and task performance is that we know that the primary driver is having a positive academic self-concept.
But the question is how you target that. If you target it direct, like it's called direct change strategy.
Direct or indirect.
You try and, or do you have them experience success?
Yeah.
Like if you look at this, like one of the best kind of narrowing the gaps findings, it's a oh, sorry, that's, I'm gonna change that up. But I'll just describe it. So the value-based approach is about what do you do with your hands and feet, and how do you handle that stigma? And I think self-concept will improve if they start to succeed around the world, but we never talk about directly improving that. And one of the interventions was with, I wanted to do this in Australia, they had standardized tests, Black, African American, white, and there's a gap, right? And all they had to do was clarify their values in one of the conditions. So what do you care about as a person? What's important to you? And they saw the gap shrink, even though it had nothing to do with taking tests or anything. In other words, once they kind of said, you know, this is what's important to me, this is what I care about, it was almost as if the way they depicted in the paper is self-resources, or this a sense of, like, I know who I am, I have this integrity, I can do this, because this is who I am, this is what I care about. But it was never a direct attempt to boost self-esteem. So we both agree, I totally agree with you that self-concept is important. The question is what is the implication for intervention? Do you directly target it and try and boost it, or does it come out as a side effect of during the act of living well?
It probably is both. Phil's got
So
that.
there was a great This American Life episode from NPR just 2 weeks ago. And it was discussing what the most successful intervention for closing the gap was. And it was integration.
Yeah.
So this gap between black and white emerged over 200 years, and within 17 years of integration it had halved. And now we're going back to segregation in the US. I point to that to say that the biggest impact was purely context.
Yeah.
So my concern comes a little bit with what I was talking about this morning. I have big problems when we talk about resilience as if it's a personality trait or it's a personal characteristic. It's not. It's something that occurs within a context of the family, within the context of the community, within the context of the neighbourhood, within the context, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So I suppose at the moment I'm a little bit concerned about, so you're going to get these attitudes and you're going to change them.
Well, we kind of overly emphasize this because that was one of the questions we had.
But what are you going to do?
So we're targeting the bigger context by targeting entire social groups of adolescents. So an imagined group would be consist of, say, 2 kids from each grade level. So right there you're bringing kids from different grade levels, indigenous, all kinds of people together, right?
Yeah.
This is even a weird thing that we separate kids by age. Like in like hundreds of years ago, different age groups used to mix. And what is the consequence of making sure? So we're mixing together. They will work as the context to support each other in creating a pro-social intervention into their larger community. So that's a sub-context, which then seeks to alter the bigger context with the support of champion teachers, hopefully elders, and people who you can connect. So it is an attempt to empower the community itself to build bigger groups that are nurturing.
And also to clarify, I think I believe that, and I think you too, we don't care whether their implicit attitudes change or not, or whether are they move or not. Sure. That's really not the point. It's a really behaviorist, contextual behaviorist approach.
I suppose what I was getting at more is that the community is larger than the school. I mean, the problem has got to be the neighbourhood.
I don't quite know how to get to that level yet. I mean, I want to bring community members in.
Well, I don't know, but I suppose the question
what about the
is,
parents?
my concern is spending $200,000 on an intervention that might work for the moment. And so I think right from the outset, you're going to need to have thoughts about how can the intervention be resilient to the constantly reinforcing social environment.
This conversation.
Yeah, I mean, one of the ideas is that champion teachers, which would be like 2 or 3 per grade, will be trained, and so initially it'll be like there'll be 6 adolescent groups, crossing all the years, and crossing racial divides and things like that together, working together. For pro-social things in place, we'll train them, we're going to train the teachers, and then we're going to then roll out the whole intervention to the school with them doing it and supporting them.
And what about the parents? And are you going to be able to bring
I would like to bring, we just started thinking about the parents.
stuff?
We want to bring community leaders, parents. So the idea is to get them involved in the solution.
Because kids are embedded in multiple systems, and so it would be really good to use the school as a hub, but then try and make sure that you're getting input from the multiple systems they're embedded in.
Not only that, but as a more sustainable system within one context, even within the context of school. We've been having conversations about how to make it, so train the teachers so they can sustain this long after you're gone.
So the idea is that you got 6 groups, and in any of those 6 groups, 1 year drops out because they graduate, but the rest of the Imagine kids are still there, so they just bring in the new kids in grade 7, integrate them in the group, and do another pro-social intervention. The teachers know how to do the training now. So we're still there supporting them. We're not leaving them, but most of the heavy lifting is done by the people who care about the community and are in the community. So, I mean, we've been doing this with the Catholic schools for a while, Imagine, and it's, the key thing is the support of the community. But some of those adolescent groups, if they have a champion teacher and the support, they've done amazing things. And some have just gone flat, and been a bit lazy, not done anything, and the teacher didn't care. So the context is crucial. But they are the context, they can change.
We've done a lot of that in terms of the anti-bullying research we've done. We've been following that sort of model, Phil, haven't we? Like in terms of looking at the individual level, the class, the school, and trying to engage the community. But I tell you, the community level can often be the most difficult.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard to, like we've found in if you run parental education for an intervention, you get small numbers of parents that turn up. And then you try other things, and I don't think we've nailed it yet. Like last time we did a bullying one, we sent home DVDs to parents with all this great stuff on. Whether they watch them or not, we have no idea.
Parents are a tricky one.
Parents are really hard, but I think that that's important for getting it. The other thing in these sort of areas that we're talking about in terms of self-sustaining, can I tell you, this is one of the hardest things and one of the least researched areas too. Like, how often do people check how self-sustaining an intervention is once they've walked in and done it and they've walked away, they've got no research funding and they've gone back to see what's going on? But in these areas, you've got the highest teacher turnover.
Yeah.
So, you're training this group of teachers, then a whole new group walks in, you're in trouble. So they're important things that we need to have a look at when we're refining this design.
One other thing we were thinking about to help, because you're right, there's a turnover, like also one of the outcomes we want to have, and we're going to put a lot of the grant money into it, is developing a web presence and an app presence that will kind of, manualize almost the process a bit. So there's a standard approach, a standard way, so that as teachers drop out, new teachers can come in and there's a standard thing that won't require us doing heavy.
But we're treading carefully because we don't want to shove content down their throats.
No.
Content has to come from them, so it has to be a collaborative, collective.
One of the other comments I had too was on stigmatising, and that was to do, and that's similar to what you were talking about too, feel like the community, that there's problems in the communities that are putting pressure on the children. I actually prefer doing the opposite, which is, you were talking about Struggle Street. It's getting them on Success Street, talking about Success Street. So I think positive role models are really...
We want to frame it as positive. I mean,
yes.
This is a little bit more negative than it actually is because we're having trouble with the measurement of this.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, we're focusing on ways to well-being, and here's thriving on Struggle Street. Very up to date. So we're going to make reference to Struggle Street when we do this. We start getting media involved to support it. We're going to say, then we're going to attack the show. We won't get invited on that channel.
We'll have our own show.
Yeah. Hippie Street.
You can all star in it.
We are trying to turn it is a very positively framed program. I just was talking to Natasha about this and how we have to focus on benefits and thriving and positive things. Because these kids are sick and tired of hearing about how crappy they're doing, how they have all these. So this was just a measurement question, but I think the program will very much focus on thriving and value and vitality, things like that.
And that's what we're finding, look, too, in terms of in the Indigenous space, what we're finding is, and this is what our Centre of Excellence application is based upon, which we got very good assessors reviews while we were away, people. Still only a 9% chance though, but we're doing well, we're going well. But what we find is kids are labelled, it's usually by their teachers.
Yeah.
And their teachers have low expectations
Yes.
of crew kids, and like crew kids, my own kids have been treated like that. Crew kids, you know, they can only do art. And so one of my daughters, who is an outstanding artist, is really good at art, but she can do academic stuff as well. My other daughter is an exceptional public speaker and academic, and yet they compliment her on her art. So it's
Yeah.
alive and well these days. So there's all this negativity, which is historically about deficit modelling,
Yeah.
about the problems, not the solutions. And I think being a positive psychology institute and positive psychologists, I think we have a lot to offer in this space in terms of turning it around from this negative way of thinking and turning it into positive ways of making
Absolutely.
a difference and making a change. And
Yeah.
this is a very exciting opportunity for us to put our collective wisdom together
Yeah.
in a huge investment of money that has taken quite a bit of time for us to secure and a few problems
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah.
But to use this money wisely for us as an institute to try out something that can turn around the lives of kids and try and disentangle which bits are working, which bits are not. So if you've got exciting ideas that you think will make a difference in these kids' lives, come and tell us so that we can apply it to this school and see how it goes. Or come out and do some work with the kids yourself.
This is really, there'll be the chances for that if people are interested in actually participating in the intervention. This is going to showcase IPI and what we know from the science. We're going to put it to the test. This is a tough school. If this is the school that does not, this is really tough. Just supporting what you're saying, in Australian Character Study, the Indigenous group, there's only about 150, but they were much lower than everybody else in terms of their feelings of being supported by teachers and parents, but not mates. So friendship support was about the same. So maybe that's maybe a peer. That's why maybe a peer-led support intervention might work. Although I want to repair that. I know I've been into those schools where you see the teachers just yelling and screaming and talking appallingly to students and abusing them. It's just like, yeah.
Is there some measure, legitimate, of the prejudice that takes place in the school, the overall measure of how many times they insulted each other and things like that? That would be a validity check on what you're doing, and it might be as good or better than the personalized measure that you were talking about.
That's true. You could just measure.
How many times have they insulted each other, seen the principal or teacher witness something like that? If you work on that, that would be...
So like a behavioral, like a frequency of behavior measure.
You know what, we could do that pretty easily by taking the bullying instrument that we've developed and adding some scales to it. That could work beautifully.
Is it a massive? We do have a big scale.
It is a big scale.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to cut.
Phil will reduce it for you, and the son will
I
take
need
the
to tell
scale. That solves the
But I mean, I
problem.
do like the idea of the kids observing pro-social and negative behaviors, maybe, and that might be a better measure. Like, just what did you observe today? So we have a diary component.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, diary
Kids
component, like what
reports
happened.
of their observations of other kids.